Hi, my name is Debbie Forster. I'm the CEO of the Tech Talent Charter. Thank you for joining us to hear from a working lunch that we had back in March of 22. The focus for the event was looking for practical strategies, practical insights from organizations that we could put to work in our own day job. We know that within tech, there is a gaping, growing hole for talent. And in order to fix that, we need to look at the whole of the pipeline. We know that it is important to think about what's happening in schools. It's why we work with an organization called Tech She Can that brings together employers to look at early inspirations and those early apprenticeships. We know that we need to think about what happens in terms of degree programs. So we work with the Institute of Coding, a program funded by government to completely reimagine what that formal training space might be. We also are working with providers looking at how do we look at apprenticeships, cross-training, upskilling, returners programs to really move us from a mindset of alternate routes into tech into really making sure all of us see it as just another way that we find great people for our organization. But too often, I heard the discussions, and it was always as employers, we looked outside our company walls to find that talent, whatever the program was called. But what we've loved seeing is the number of companies who are starting to think that actually we have great opportunity inside our company walls. People who currently work for us, who are either in jobs that are at risk or who are getting itchy feet, wanting a different kind of challenge. We know that there's opportunity here. There's research that's been done by HP and the Fawcett Society when they talked to women not in tech, and 45% of women interviewed were actually interested in a career in tech. So you weren't able to be here on the day, and it was a shame because there was some great breakout sessions. But what we'd like you to have is a sense and to be able to listen in to what we heard from the panel on the day. So I'm going to hand over to my panel, let you hear the great insights that we had back in March. Right, okay, over to my panel. You know, the toughest question I always ask you is at the start. You have less than a minute to introduce yourself to the audience while you're here. Sarah, you have the misfortune of being in the top left-hand part of my screen, so will you please go first?
Sure. So I'm Sarah Fazy. I work at Microsoft. I am the social value lead, which means I'm working particularly in our public sector teams, looking at how we can support our customers with additional broader value. But for the last year or so, I've also been very much driving our skills programs and looking at how we think more creatively about skilling, both for our own organization, but we work as a business with what we call our partner ecosystem, which is 30,000 organizations that we have connections with that use our platform in various ways to do their own work and their own business. So looking at how we can work with our partner ecosystem and our customers and the small businesses and all the various people we work with to get people thinking differently about connecting talent to opportunity and being creative about where they find that talent. So that brought me into touch with you guys and Experis and all sorts of people where we all know there's a problem and we're all looking for creative ways to solve it. So I'm really looking forward to today's chat.
Thank you so much, Sarah. Nicole, you're next on my screen for you. Can you go next, please?
Sure, hang on.
And you can't hide from me, Nicole. Even if your camera's off, I'm going to make you introduce yourself.
I will introduce myself, but I apologize. My video has just stopped and I cannot turn it back on. But let me tell you about myself. Let's go from there. So Nicole Hardman, I'm an engineering manager for Nationwide Business Building Society, soon to be a data engineering manager, so a little career pivot of my own. I look after a couple of hundred engineers, and at the moment we are having those challenges with people trying to come through the market. We know there's a skill shortage out there. We know there are problems trying to get specific types of skills into the marketplace. Additional to that, I'm the founder of our Women in Tech organization inside of Nationwide. So we've got about 300 plus ladies and their supporters, because it's not just for women, inclusion means everybody. And we are trying to help people understand where they can go with technology from that space. And, you know, it's not just for people who are already techie, it's for people who want to be techie in the future. So, you know, trying to open that door in that space. As well as that, I am the co-founder of a local inclusion and diversity network. So we are helping organizations around the local area understand more about IND, and that's outside of the tech space as well as in it. It's just really obvious in the tech space. I think we there's an issue. We all know it. Let's not pretend there's not. And I was on the hackathon team that helped create this white paper, which was a brilliant experience, and I would absolutely recommend to anybody else.
Fantastic. And if anyone wants to have a look at that product, if you look in the chat, there's a link to the hackathon product, and we'll be covering up some of the concepts there. Last but not least, Martin.
Thank you. Yeah, so I'm Martin Ewings. I look after the Experis brand in the UK. So we're the technology-focused staffing and IT services brand within Manpower Group UK. And I personally am passionate about supporting organisations, both SMEs right the way up to big corporates, in tackling the challenges that we see in the UK currently around technology skills gaps. I also sit on the Tech UK Skills and Diversity Board. And actually, I don't see a difference between the challenges faced in trying to drive a more inclusive, diverse workforce and close the skills gap. Debbie, I think you were spot on at the top. I think that is just a key part of that jigsaw in solving those problems. So I'm very keen today to hear from everyone here what sort of challenges you face in the marketplace, and then we can talk about the kind of solutions that are applicable to both small and large businesses alike.
Brilliant. And I hope everyone hears, because I know sometimes there's the idea that if I only have the big companies, what does that mean if I'm a startup or an SME? And we'll try and make sure. And if you think we're not getting in and talking about what that means to companies who are smaller, then you push us and we'll make sure that we get you some answers. Okay, so I'm a company that has woke and decided I've got to look at how I do some cross-skilling. I might be looking at my company and realizing there's a group of staff that might be interested or that might be facing redundancies, or I just want to start it out. Okay, where do I start? Okay, so I want to do retraining. Tell me, panel, what are some essential building blocks that I need to have in place to make this successful?
I'll go first, shall I? I'll jump in. I think the first thing you need to understand is what is the benchmark against which you're going to assess capability and talent. If you are looking to fill a gap and you purely look at the skills that role will demand, so the technology experience, etc., you are going to eliminate anyone that hasn't done that job previously, and you're limiting the pool of talent that you're accessing. If you look at the capabilities that underpin those skills, so I'm talking about things like resilience, problem solving, curiosity, etc., those things you'll be able to see in spades across your organization. So the first thing I would say is understand what you want the roles that you're looking to fill to cover, what capabilities do they require, and then look within your organization for adjacent roles that have those capabilities, and then you can add the skills on top quite simply, I think. And then I'd also say be conscious of how you are communicating to your business to look for interest, because you need to demystify what those roles are going to be. Not everyone speaks tech language. Not everyone would look at a cybersecurity role and think, oh yeah, that's going to be easy, I'll try and do that. So communicate to them in terms of the capability. So do you enjoy solving problems in your current role? Well, I've got a great opportunity for you. And kind of de-risk that engagement and inspire an audience that typically might not have looked at those roles in the past.
Okay, build on that for me, Nicole, Sarah. What else do I need in terms of foundation, even before I start attracting others? So I need to, in designing what I'm trying to do, I need to flip the lens and I need to understand underlying skills. I need to think about it in different ways. What are some of the things I need to do internally to make this work?
I think there's something. Sorry, go on. We're going to be too polite now. I think there's something really important about really understanding the skills that you're looking for. You have to be really clear about what you want to do and where you want to drive that interest. So make sure that you are getting the right interest for the right skills for the right gap that you have. And I think that's really important. And then what Martin said about demystifying tech, absolutely massively important. We have an internal radio station that goes out to our branches, and I did an interview with them around women in tech, and I thought I'd been really inclusive. I thought I'd been very, very, very super careful. I'd mentioned Scrum Masters. I came off of that interview and the lady said, that was great, it was amazing. What's the Scrum Master? Right. So I think we have to be very, very cautious about the language that we use. But yes, absolutely understanding where the gaps are, what we want to fill, and then adjacent to, as Martin said, is a really great place to start looking.
Sarah, what else would I need to do?
Yeah, I would build on that. I think that demystifying is so important. I work in a tech company, and when you see the rolling scroll of the sort of various roles that are available inside our business, most of them is just double speak to me. I don't know what those words mean. I'm not a techie. And I think a lot of that is about being much clearer about what the core skills are for some of those roles, as Martin said, but also having the kind, it starts with culture, and you mentioned culture earlier, Debbie, having a culture of curiosity whereby all organizations move and change all the time, and roles change and grow, and different departments have different issues. But I think if you're in an area, if there's an area of your business where there's maybe people who might be kind of reached a point where they're not going to be learning anymore, or there's no growth opportunities for them, it's building those slow and steady steps from that place to the place where you do really have need, and making those places exciting to go to. If you have created a culture where people are wanting to learn, wanting to grow, wanting to develop, and they've reached a point in the part of the world that they're in, that scope isn't there, you've got to make it interesting and de-risk it for them to jump into those new roles.
And I think that's really important, that culture of learning. And I think the companies who are really breaking through and having real success in this space have this idea that every company is a company that needs to be learning. This upskilling of our team isn't just for getting people into tech, it is making sure that we're upskilling our tech skills. So this idea of all we need to do is hire in our talent and it's there, we have to change a mindset, don't we? So there's a culture of learning, but what about that business case? What do I say to the hiring managers or to the middle managers who say, don't have time for this, I need a dev on Thursday? So what do I need to do in terms of changing that mindset?
I think the hiring manager one is the real problem in large organizations, because I think collectively we can all agree that we want diversity and we want inclusion and we want new ways to bring in new talent. But if you're the hiring manager, who you're absolutely right, is now looking at taking on somebody who actually isn't going to be job ready for a year or two, maybe more, that's a huge ask of a hiring manager who's under pressure to deliver whatever they're expected to deliver. So you also need a culture which is going to say to that hiring manager, we know we're asking you to take a bigger risk than we would otherwise expect you to take. That's what we're going to have to start doing as a business. We need to take the risk off of you, the hiring manager, as well. And that's about adapting to the expectations of that team a little bit. Over time, it works, right? So if you're looking at a 4 or 5 year window and you've got a lovely supply of fresh talent coming in all the time from different places across your business, it will work. But in those early days when you're trying to make a model work, where you're bringing in people who don't necessarily have the right tech skills for that job at that time, you have to de-risk it for the hiring manager. And again, that comes back to, I would say, to culture. All the hiring managers in your business need to know that they're safe to do that.
And I think that's safety. And I agree. And I think that's also very, very true for smaller teams when we're looking at smaller companies. The idea of the fear of that empty chair. Martin, you and I had a discussion. You had a really interesting way of presenting to people why reskilling made sense. Because when all I'm thinking is, but I've got to find talent, I've got to find talent, I've got to find talent. Talk me through that.
Yeah, I mean, the kind of the digital revolution that we're seeing in the industry means that exponential change of skills in the market means that no workforce is static. Your hiring manager might say, I need someone now, thinking they've solved the problem, but that person's skills become out of date very quickly. So an organization needs to realize that to succeed and thrive going forwards, they need to also be a developer of skills. You can't just be a consumer of talent, you also have to be a developer of skills. Otherwise, your entire workforce has a shelf life within a couple of years. So organizations need to bake into their talent development or their talent management development of skills. And I think there'll always be a space for an urgent, I need someone tomorrow example an illness, someone retires, or whatever it might be. You might need someone very quickly. But in order to solve those longer problems, you have to look at talent in a different way. And I think we talked about the job specification that we get as an agency. We still have the request of, we would like to see a diverse shortlist of candidates, and we'd like to see people who have come from different backgrounds and from different industries. And then I get their essential skills, and it's must have 5 years experience using this technology, must have worked in this sector. And you think you're just asking us to fish in the same pool, but demanding different results. If we look at the desirable skills on a job spec and you flip those, and the desirable skills are things like curiosity, resilience, etc., that I talked about earlier on, they're the things that should be the building block of assessment of talent. So actually, as an organization, when you're looking for the role you're trying to fill, put capabilities first, put skills second.
Good. And is there anything, Nicole, that you remember from the hackathon team, thinking about that business case and journey that we need to remember to build in before we set out on this journey?
Absolutely, yeah. Business buy-in and getting the business case right was absolutely the forefront of our mind when we did the hackathon. It was, how did you get the buy-in from the senior management that said, let's give the permission for this to be okay, that we recognise that velocity might get hit a little bit, but we're building for the future. And then we were saying, okay, if we're going to reskill our own workforce, we then need to get the buy-in from the people where we're poaching that talent internally from, if that's the right word. So if I want to go to the call centres or to the branch network in my world, then I need their buy-in, because I'm about to take probably their best people off them. I don't want to do that. They're probably the problem solvers. They are the people that sort of take away all of the pain for them, and they might be the people who actually are the go-to person to fix the systems that they're working on. So they might have that real in-depth knowledge of those systems that people use day to day. So I need their buy-in to say, yes, I know I'm going to do this, but I'm going to help you out and try and bring something back and make sure that we're not disadvantaging you. And then I need the buy-in of the tech teams themselves.
Yes.
So most of the engineers don't have any problem whatsoever inviting somebody new. The technologies that we're using are so new, they're only a couple of years old anyway, for the most part. I mean, that's not all of our things. We have stuff that's over 40 years old, but we'll leave that alone. And we bring these people in, and they basically start their tech career with a brand new technology. And they're the first person that's used it in our organization. So they are now the expert in a very, very short period of time. But it's recognizing that length of tenure does not make you the expert in that space. It's how you use the technology that's in front of you.
I think that's such a good point, because I think you're right. The pace of change with tech is so fast and so dynamic. It is about the mindset and the curiosity and the willingness to learn that is, those are the people that we all want. And where you go to find those people, either, I've seen there's a question about, bringing in new talent, but where you go to find that talent needs to be as diverse as possible, yes, but you kind of, we're trying to, certainly as an organisation, we're trying to role model being very creative in this stuff around secondments and interns and apprenticeships and reskilling programs and all the things that all big organisations do. But we're all looking for that needle in the haystack, which is somebody who's adaptable and interested and excited about the opportunity. And those are really simple things that most people on this call no doubt have. And we know when we meet those people, we know when we meet those enthusiasts who want to try new things. And they can be anywhere. We've just got to have the models to find them.
Super. Okay, so let me make sure I got it straight. If I'm doing it, I first of all have to make sure I have clarity and I can share more across the organization of a really different definition of talent, what it looks like, how we define it, what those skills, but have real clarity on what it is I'm looking for. I need to make sure I've made a real business case so that I can bring everyone on board with me, whether that is top senior level, whether that is hiring managers, whether that is tech teams, where it is the people who are going to lose people to tech, so that we all see about the net gain for the organization, that we see that this is there's going to be some loss of velocity in order to get more capacity. It is about making sure we change those drivers. It's about hiring managers, team leaders being given permission and understanding about that change in velocity, that different way of working. And then it is about embedding in our organization a culture of learning and that is an accepted part of day-to-day business, that we are learning organizations that will help us on this cross-skilling piece, but also help us as an organization overall. All right. So let's pretend I get that done by next Thursday. All right. I've had a really busy 7 days, got it done. Everybody's on board. Everybody's excited, thinks this is a great thing to do. So I need to start thinking about attraction. How do I do that? And what do I not do? And I think there've been some great examples of what not to do, things that companies have tried and had to look and say, yeah, that wasn't good. Let's not do that. So what do I need to do? I've got everybody ready. We're up for this. We're going to do retraining in the company. What should I do?
So I would say that you have to first of all assume that the role that you play as talent leadership is not a passive one. And my organization has been as guilty as this as anything. You hear the phrase, well, I advertised the job on the internet and didn't get a response. That's not the responsibility of the individual trying to attract, to understand your language, understand the role, understand the acronyms you're using. You need to get the organization as a whole to have either a 9-box culture or whatever it might be, where you're assessing talent against capabilities. And then you have to go and tap that person on the shoulder and educate them about what the opportunity is and what the role is. And you need to take them on that journey in a way that is de-risking it for them. I think there was a question about how do we go about educating people around tech roles? There's no easy way to do it. You have to sit with them and talk to them and show them what the role looks like, bring it to life for them. It's not a passive role that you play. And I also wrote down about the hiring manager that loses the staff and how do you counter that. All I would argue is it's just a different type of loss. In the hiring and attractive staff is one thing, retaining staff is another. Research shows again and again that development of skills is one of the key things that keeps people at an organization or means they choose to join that organization. If that hiring manager can show a career pathway from their department to another department to a higher pay, better skilled job, that's going to be more attractive to future candidates. If they don't do it, they're going to lose them to the marketplace anyway. So it's just a different type of loss. So again, it's an education about a mindset of a hiring manager, I think.
Super. Who wants to build on that?
The other thing I would say to that is that certainly there's a lot of research at the moment, and anybody who's been looking at hiring younger people, whether that's within or without your organisation, there's theories around how, you know, they're now recruiting you. You're not recruiting them. You know, there's a real change to the attitude that people have when they're looking for work now. That, you know, they don't have to sell themselves to you. You have to sell yourself to them. And they have got a lot more of the power perhaps than they used to. You know, we're all struggling with a skill shortage. So really understanding your market in classic marketing language, really research your audience. You know, who are these people that you want to go after, and really be thoughtful about where you're going to go and find them. And, you know, I know there's lots of big organizations that we've spoken to who think that the answer is to look at more than the few universities that, you know, they looked at these Russell Group universities, they're now going to look at 5 more Russell Group universities, or they're going to start funding higher level courses at key universities so that they can buy it.
Can I bring you back to the internal channel piece? Yes. So I think it's looking in that same way, and I think we've talked about this earlier. It's about thinking about adjacent spaces, isn't it? It's looking at those core skills and changing that mindset. Nicole, did you have anything that you saw at Nationwide or heard about on your group?
It's a really interesting thing because as a large organization, Nationwide has several get into tech type initiatives where, you know, some are a bit try before you buy. You can do a taste, or you can apply to be, if you imagine like a graduate program, but it's not, it can be a career changer program as well. And what we've done in the past, which hasn't worked very well, is we've gone into places like our call centres, set up a booth in the corner and said, come and talk to us about technology. No. But then we have great success when the teams are working really closely together. So we have brought people through our technology development program who work in the mortgage broker space, who now work in the team that produces the tech artifacts that go into that. And that's brilliant because they come with that consumer idea as well. They know how painful it is to use that, or not painful, or where the pain points are. And they're able to bring that knowledge in, which is brilliant. It's just a small step into technology for them. If I look at what we're doing with the group, it's something different. Usually these employers are quite a lot smaller. And if there's somebody internal that they can see they're shining, they know that they're a brilliant person, and then it's a case of having the conversation that says, look, this isn't that much different to what you do day to day. It's a tiny little step. We just need you to build a little bit of confidence. And what we think you can do is there's all of these options. There are the government funded boot camps, there's the apprenticeships, there's all sorts of stuff that you can do to bring things in-house, there's online learning. And, you know, however that person learns best, because I think that's really individual as well, and just helping them and encouraging them to you know, reach out and give it a go. Because I think most people, if you make that safe, will try. If you put a big label over the top of it that says, I want you to give this a go, and if you don't reach this level, I'm going to have to let you go, that's really terrible, that's never going to work. You have to make it a safe space where people can jump in and say, yeah, I'm going to try this technology thing, I'm going to see if I can do it. I bet for the 90% of people, 99% of people, I bet they can. Not a problem.
And I was just going to say, using programs, so we have a program called Tech Her, probably very similar to yours, Nicole,
yes,
which we use externally, but actually starting to use those kind of programs internally, because even inside your organisation, groups that somehow think that those roles aren't for them, which historically might have been women, it might be all sorts of different groups, but use those programs that we use externally to attract, use them internally, which is what I mean, kind of using marketing devices inside your organisation to draw your audiences in.
Good. Okay, so I'm hearing we are, and I like the idea, it's putting our marketing hat on in it, because we're abandoning that if we build it, they will come. You know, if we just that, you know, they're just waiting for it and we'll wait for them to come. We need to look at how we demystify. We strip out all of the jargon, all of the things. We go down into those really core skills, not do you want to be in cyber, but are you good at problem solving? We want to ensure that if we're in a large company, that we're trying to be data driven to understand where the spaces are. If we're in smaller companies, it's easier. We can do that old thing that we call conversations, in which we talk to people. When we're having that, as well as demystifying, we are trying to pull out risk. We're trying to make it so it doesn't feel so terrifying to come out of comfort zone. We're looking at confidence issues. I'm hearing in companies where, in large companies, medium-sized companies, you can do taster pieces. I know of one larger organization that actually took a look and said, actually, no matter what your job function, we need everybody to have an understanding of tech and how we use tech in the company. And so even if it wasn't to get you into the tech team, there was something that was worth having a core part of organizational training to think and to dig in. So it became easier to demystify and to talent spot in those pieces. Some of you were mentioning doing sort of visiting programs, secondments, working alongside. In smaller companies, there are a lot of online free programs where people can get tasters and everything, but we're looking at breaking down barriers. We're looking at building up confidence, and we're trying to talk in language and understand from a marketing standpoint, where are people starting and how do we bring them on the journey for the piece? Have I missed anything else? Because then I think we'll go on to, let's start training them. Anything else that you want to throw in that, but Debbie, don't forget not to do this or to do this on the attraction piece? I think the only thing I would add to it is the minute you get a success story, remember the power of story. And I think it's powerful to try and bring it to life. So even if you can't have stories from within the company, gathering examples of how people have made those career conversions, bringing that to life is another powerful thing that we can use in trying to do that.
I would completely agree with that. And I think the other thing that I wouldn't want to lose in the sort of reaching out to people thing is maybe changing your tech career. You might already be a brilliant coder in XYZ language, but we want you to come and learn this new shiny one. And for some people, that's a really big leap, and it's very much along the same pathway, but it is something that we need to consider, because that technology is just never going to stop moving. We just need to make sure people are up to date. We have people in our organization who are currently reskilling towards cloud operations. But it's not something they've had to touch so far, but it's something they're interested in. They know where technology is heading, and that's where they want to go as well, which is great, because that's an easy sell. They already know they want to do it. There are people who don't want to do that. They come in, they do their 9 to 5, they do what they like to do, and they don't want to look into that. But we want to make sure they're job secure for the future. So let's make sure they've got a bit of that training as well.
Fantastic. And I think it is about that, understanding the individuality of people and making sure we have that full range of support. And it is about creating those safe spaces for experimentation and exploration for people to find out, accepting that some people will look at it, look around and say, yeah, not for me. I'm going to go back into finance. This is where I'm happy and I'm loved and this is where I want to stay. But there will be a lot of people that as they start tinkering, as they start playing, thinking, that's interesting. That's something I might want to do.
And Debbie, I would add as well, we're talking about internal attraction and movement across businesses. I've broadened that definition to include alumni as well. So the people that say that's not for me, I'll leave. I think a differentiator of organizations in the future is going to be those that elegantly handle the exit of employees and keep in touch with them. So the good news stories you talked about, don't just talk internally, talk to those that left your organization. They'll come back.
Nice. That's nice. And create a revolving door. Because again, the person that comes back is that much more committed in being back. Super. Okay, so company's all excited. We're all completely behind it. We did an awesome attraction piece. I've got myself a group of people who want to start doing training, and I'm going to do it. What should I do? What should I not do?
I'll go. I suppose you've got a couple of ways of doing it. You're either finishing one job on Friday and starting the new job on Monday, and so now you're looking at a boot camp sort of scenario where you're going to take somebody and you're going to work super fast to skill them up as quickly as you can. So that might be an option, particularly just seen Nicole, if there's a group of people who have at risk of redundancy and you think, what, the best thing we can do now is take this group of people and put them on a 12-week boot camp and find out how many of them want to stay and do this job.
Super.
That's a way, a quick and fast way. There may be another way, which is actually we're going to transition over a period of time. So I've got this core skill set, which I know and I'm still valued for, but I'm going to take a day a week or 2 days a week, and I'm going to start to learn on a online training program or a module of some kind. I'm going to take it over time. So you're not complete, which is possibly, if you're curious but not quite committed, that's one route. But certainly for the facing redundancy, need to move quickly, there's amazing boot camps out there. They're 70% funded at the moment if you do the DFE one. So it's such a powerful way. Certainly Microsoft has really thrown its name behind the boot camps, because they're not going to get you to the higher end skills, they're still at a sort of lower level. But actually, if this is the start of a reskilling program, so you're doing your basic fundamentals on a 12-week course that gets you to here, you found out whether you enjoy the kind of content, you found out whether you have any aptitude and you want to progress, and then you move forward.
Super, that's great. Nicole, Martin, what would you add in that training space? What should I remember? What should I avoid? What must I absolutely do?
I think there's a couple of ways to go about it. I think there is, do you have the opportunity to create a fully internal thing that you can run yourselves and you have your own technical people helping out and sort of create a program? You have to be a pretty big organization to be able to do that. And for most organizations, that's not going to be on the cards. Even when we're doing a technology development program, they go on bootcamp and then they come back and they start their technology development program properly after that. I think if you're a much smaller organization, I think the apprenticeships and the bootcamps are a really great way to go, but it depends on the support that you have around that person. Because a bootcamp's great, 12 weeks is great, that's amazing. And if you can do that for the people in your team, that is super. But you're not going to be a super top tip functioning engineer at that point, and you're going to need the ongoing support around it. So you have to look at
absolutely, and we'll come to that in a minute. And I think let's think about, as people finish some of the training, what comes next. But that's super. So it's thinking, yes, you can create your own little bespoke internally, but really understand what do you have, what do you not have, velocity, capacity, those sorts of things. I can dip into outside programs. Martin, what else are you seeing companies do that's effective or not effective, naming no names, of course, in terms of the trading space?
I think the first thing to realize is that the reason that you're doing it is to benefit your business. It is not solely to benefit the individual. That's a knock-on effect. That's not your principal aim here. So if that is the focus, then you cannot say to someone, I'm going to upskill you, and could you do it at the weekend in the evenings and fit it around your existing work today, please? Because you're setting that person up to fail through the training. So I think you have to be serious about giving that person the bandwidth to be able to focus on upskilling and developing. And it's not just classroom based, it is experiential as well. Get them involved in the role that's coming forward so they can put it into life, because this kind of training we're talking about and upskilling, people will move at different paces and at different times. And you may deem that one person is not succeeding simply because they are taking slower to understand it. Once they get it, they might fly. So it's about working with an individual, one size fits one type mentality to that training, and making sure that they have the bandwidth to take it on board and that they're integrating into the new role as and when you're training them.
Super. And so I'm hearing, and people are saying, you know, how do you choose which one? There's so many boot camps, there are so many providers, but let me start with, in some ways, that is the good news. We'll talk about how do we deal with such a plethora of good news, but the thing is to remember that we need to think customization at this stage. This is not one size fits all. If we really want to grow people, we need to have those conversations. And again, I would say this is where, if you're a smaller company, you have that advantage, because there is already those relationships that you can do in terms of building the confidence and doing these things. But there is the whole range, but don't just assume that because this worked for the first person, it's going to work for all. But you know, how do we recommend, if I'm going to market to find somebody who's a provider, what are the sorts of questions I need to ask myself when I'm understanding who to look for?
Well, I say we've built an ecosystem of training providers that we use when we support customers. We've done that because you're right, there is not one supplier that can meet every need. So I would say that my advice is talk to more than one training provider, and look for training providers that are asking you questions. They need to be able to understand what your business goals are in order to be able to bespoke a course to you. So don't just go for off-the-shelf packages. And organizations are willing and able to tailor the training courses to meet your need. So I would work with organizations that have that flexibility and that interest to make sure that what they're producing is what you need and isn't just an off-the-shelf package.
Good. Nicole, did you want to build on that?
Yeah, I was going to say I would absolutely completely agree. And I think the other thing for me is bootcamp's great, but I love the idea of the apprenticeship stuff, because you have to do on-the-job learning. You have to prove that you're doing that and that you've been given time to be allowed to continue doing the learning that you are, or actioning the learning that you're learning. So I think, yeah, look at all the different providers. Obviously, you can go through all of the reviews online. That's a pretty standard thing these days. But do talk to them, understand what they're offering. And if somebody says, you know, it's just X, no, okay, you need somebody who's going to understand you better.
And I would
go ahead.
I know you do expect me to say this anyway, but I'd say it's for any supplier. You need the certification. You know, we've got all sorts of research and evidence that says if you can evidence that you have the certificate in that thing, that is a much easier way to go and get the job, or to go and prove that you have the skills for that job. So absolutely, we're hiring for the right mindset, but on those training programs, look that there is certification included, so that you're coming off it with a, you know, I'm qualified in this particular technology for cyber or whatever, because recruiters and organizations know what tech they've got, know that those certifications provide evidence of a certain standard of skill on that product. So look for certifications would be my only thing.
All right, so again, let's make sure I've got this in my head. It's when I'm designing and choosing my provider, I'm looking, asking questions. I'm not assuming if it worked for another company, it works for me. I'm looking for providers who ask questions. I'm understanding what works for one person may not work for every person. I'm trying to make this as customized an experience as possible. I'm trying to, wherever I can, keeping it bound into the job. so that they, that there's a real world aspect of it, that there's a real company aspect of it. So, and I liked back, if I think about, Sarah, the first when you were talking about the different ways that we can sandwich that training in, it is looking at that training being in work time. All right. And I do think that's really important, that we're not doing this assumption that they'll do their cross training on top of their job at night, because why would we let them have a life? Why would we not think that they can do that? So I think that building in realistic ways, keeping that safe, looking at on those redundancy programs, is that something we build that training in very, very quickly? If we look at sandwiching it a day a week, lots of ways it can be sliced and diced. So let's pretend I had that cohort. They did fantastic on the training. That training has come to an end. I'm bringing them into the tech team. So I'm done and I can walk on and go find my other learners? What do I need to do as that training? What is that onboarding like, and what makes success?
Mentors would be my one word.
Absolutely.
What else do I need to build in? And actually talk to me, why do I need mentors? And it's interesting that we talked about mentors. That is not the same as your line manager. Why do we need mentors?
Like, I'll go first. I think mentor is very different to your line manager. Line managers can be amazing and brilliant. We've all met brilliant ones. They can also be very tactical about, I need this by Tuesday. And yes, they should be doing your career development, but not all line managers are good at doing career development. A mentor doesn't have to worry about the day-to-day of what you've got to deliver in your job. They can step back a little bit and think a lot more about your skill set, your contribution in the broadest sense. They can take a view of where their experience and their knowledge has come from and how they can really help you and inform you with the broad skills that you need and where your development might be. That's just not so connected to that day-to-day of, have you delivered the project by Friday? They're not interested in that. And that makes a big difference for a learning culture, for a culture which is going to carry on being excited about you learning new skills and growing your role. That isn't always in your line manager's interest. It's two very different things, I would say.
I'd also say vulnerability as well. So it's not easy for someone that's just taken that leap to be able to open up to a line manager and say, I'm not comfortable, I don't understand. You've got to create that support network so they can voice that. And I'd also say, I loved your point there, Sarah, about learning culture. Don't think I've moved that person, they've now learned, I'll walk away. This is a continual journey. It sounds harsh, but you almost want to start thinking, what next? Where do we continue this journey? How do I keep developing this person? So I'd build that into the mix as well.
Good.
And I would absolutely agree. I mean, where I work at the moment, there's a different type of line management structure. So we're matrix. So the people with the demands are not your line manager. But I would still recommend having that mentor who really understands the deeply techy thing that you're learning, because you will continue to learn. I think the important thing then is having as open as you can conversation with your line manager, because I recognise that's not going to be the right thing for everybody. And then say, where do I want my career to go next? What's the next thing that I want to learn? Because tech does move so quickly. We can't just say, do you know what, it's brilliant, I've learned React, I'm a fantastic front-end engineer, this is brilliant. But what if we don't want to use that next week?
Exactly. Good. And that goes back into that wider culture, isn't it, that we have to get everyone to go through. And I'd add to that, it sounds to me as if I need to be providing some training to the line managers who are bringing in those people. Do you think that's true?
Again, I think that is about continuous learning. As a manager of people, you should want to continually learn and improve and be a good manager of people, right? So finding ways in which and line managers are tested if they're bringing in new talent or somebody from a background that they're not familiar with, or it's not another Russell group, whatever, those are things that managers can feel uncomfortable with. And I think all that support and coaching for managers to be great managers, we all know, people leave a job because they don't get on with their manager, the number one reason people leave a job. So to have invested in this new skilling program and excited somebody about kind of taking on this new role and how cool it's going to be, and they're going to have all these new skills, the last thing you then want is for them to be thoroughly disappointed by a line manager who can't support and help them. So
absolutely.
So key.
Martin, did you want to add to that?
I was going to say, we are also using this as a driver for a more inclusive and diverse workforce. if we then use the tools, processes, and language to manage people that we used to historically, it isn't going to work. It won't stick. So I think we need to educate leaders to act as much as coaches as leaders, but also, what tools, processes, and language is appropriate for the new workforce.
Great. And I think it is getting that shift in mindset as well, that we need to change and create different cultures to be able to retain and grow people in that space. Nicole, do you want to add to anything on that?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think it's really important that we create the culture and that we see that top down in the large organizations. And I think it's almost easier to provide air cover and make sure that the line managers are at a standard that we'd expect them to be, which means coaching and mentoring themselves, even if it's not the people directly, maybe it's somebody else that they're mentoring, so they understand that relationship. But in a smaller organization, that's a lot harder because it's hard to get away from that very intimate group of people in a small organization. So I think it's on us as line managers, regardless of size of organization, to continue our own learning, to make sure that we're up to date with all of the things that we need to understand to get the best out of our people moving forward.
And probably if I'm in a smaller organization, I'm going to want to look at a provider who can help me with those other things if I don't have that within.